Hello, and welcome again to our third lesson. I am, once again, Morgan Krupke. You can also call me Ms. K. And today, we are going to be making a shadow box theater set. So you will need, and it's on our list here, you will need your scissors, your paintbrush and your paint set, your pencil and your eraser. That's for the drawing and painting part, obviously. And then you will need some of your white papers. So we have your vellum tracing paper, your two A4 8.5 by 11 pieces of printing paper, and most excitedly, your box. I would suggest using the box bottom. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a bit of a scene. So I am going to do a forest scene that I'm attaching using the paper to the box, and we're going to paint it all. So I started cutting higher up on one end and then lower on the other, and then I sort of met it in the middle, and then I could just tear it off at the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean that up, but it's easier when you get the lid separated. Now you can make a nice clean line. And I'm going to use our transparency as our template. Now it should be this roughly the interior size of your box, which it is. So I'm lining it up with these natural rough marks here, which you should be able to see. There's sort of like cuts in your box that you didn't make, they just came that way, and that's fine. So I'm going to center my paper, make sure it looks relatively even on both sides. Again, we're just eyeballing it. But what I am gonna do is just draw the corners of where the paper meets here. Am I still straight? So these are guides to let us know exactly how large our paper is. There we go. Set your paper aside again. Okay, so first things first, we do not want to cut all the way to that edge. We want to give our paper a little bit of breathing room so it can rest on the back here. This is where we're going to glue. We're going to glue on the back the paper to the box, because this will then become a window, this area. And this paper is what's going to allow us to do project 4 with the dragon and the witch or wizard. But in order to have this set in, we need some space, just like you would do on a picture frame. I've made roughly just in one little corner, that's about enough space. So it's a little over ½ inch, maybe almost an inch. In fact, I have my ruler handy. I can tell you exactly. Yeah, so it's over ½ inch. It's 3/4 inch. It's plenty of room for your paper to rest inside of. Again, we're just ballparking it, so it doesn't have to be 1/4 inch, but you want a decent width. You don't want a huge amount, but something about that size is good. Okay, so using our edge here of the flap, which hopefully it hasn't been too roughed up, and we're going to use it as a ruler. See? Pretty much a straight line. All right, so you're gonna do that for each edge here, including the bottom. And now comes a bit of the tricky part. We are going to cut through this section. This section goes away because this becomes our window then. And we're going to use our scissors to do that. Now, this is going to be a little bit difficult, but here's a really fun trick. So you can very gently do that. I have a really hard service, so that's why I just stabbed it. All right. So very gently go in and then just sort of twist a nice big hole, okay? Make sure you're doing this on a surface that your parents won't be terrified of you making holes in it, all right? Okay. Now just start cutting up to whatever location you want. I'm gonna go to the middle of the top here. Well, what I'm calling the top. All right, so there is going to be a point where your scissors will go, but they won't all the way go to the edge, and that's okay. Because this is the tricky part. We have to get our scissors in. There we go. Now I got it. This will take a bit and it may look a little bit ugly. Don't worry about it. We will clean it up at the end. Particularly this section, just breaking into it is going to be your ugliest part. Because then if you can lift up, you'll relieve some of the pressure with your scissors so that you'll be able to cut a clean line. And if this hurts your hands, just take your time. You probably don't have enough muscle development there yet. But I promise it will be cool. It's rewarding. Almost there. Ta-da! Okay. Set that bottom part aside. And now we're just going to go in and clean up some of those ugly edges. Again, if you have an area that you're worried about the tear, even if it tears like this, it's fine. You don't really need tape. This part, it is a little ugly, but it's the back of the box. No one's going to see that. So don't worry about any damage to this white area. If it is really rough, however, it's going to be really hard to glue your paper to it. So like I have this area, try and just smooth that out, straighten it out so that you can put your glue stick over it. There we go. So that should be just fine. Okay. All right, so now that you have your box cut out, now we get to have some fun. We are going to glue your paper into your box using those 4 corner edges, okay, as your guide. So grabbing your glue stick, we're gonna make it purple. Lots of glue. Okay, nice and purple. Now, very carefully, we are going to match up our edges here. And the nice thing about this glue is that it can slide a little bit if you need it to. All right. Gently but firmly go along your edge and attach all of your sides of the paper here. Okay, there you go. All right, so that is the back of your box. This is what the front looks like. So now we get to have a bit of fun with scenery. So using our 2 pages, any sort of scenery that you want for the setting of your dragon and your witch or wizard. So like I had said before, I'm thinking I'm going to do trees and make these big, bold shapes. Don't do a lot of tiny detail because again, you're using your scissors to cut it out, and the more small it is, the more difficult it's going to be. So I'm going to show you. All right, so I want to cover probably that much of one side. For this side, I might even do a castle, which would take a little bit more space, so about that much. So I'm gonna fold this paper in half, going hot dog, and then I'm gonna start drawing out my idea. So this is where you'll need your pencil and your eraser. Nice crisp fold. And I'm using that as a guide. I don't really want to cut exactly because you're gonna fold it over the edge a little bit and glue it that way, top and bottom. So you're gonna glue over, glue over, glue over. I'll show exactly what that looks like. But I'm going to also make margins like we had done with the box. I'm just gonna draw kind of where the paper lines up, about even on both edges. Draw a line where it meets the box, okay? And the fold is exactly where the box edge is. Just about anyhow, you can see that. Okay. I'm going to fold my paper so that I create a little bit of a tab over my previous fold. So here's what that looks like. That meets the edge of the box. This is the tab I want to be able to glue and fold over the box. So this line that you have now made in your paper, fold both ways. We're gonna do exactly like how we had done with our accordion books. So I am very, very crisply folding it back and forth. You can also use your scissors at this point to cut that off, which I'm going to tear. It's a lot easier with printer paper. Okay. All right, so this is the margin that I want to draw. Possibly a big tree and a castle. So I don't want to cut too far into this, so I'm gonna, as in you want to leave most of this as your visual. So I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. I want to leave as much screen space as possible. Let's see, I'm going to start drawing my castle. And I don't believe in the laws of physics, so my castle's going to do some bendy things just 'cause it's magic. Okay. And then here I'm gonna have all right. castle. And now I'm going to draw some, I don't like how that looks, shrubs. Sticking within this margin. Okay. Now, fun part, clean this up and paint it. So I'm just lightly rubbing my eraser along the whole thing. If it starts to streak, then flip your eraser over to another side that doesn't have as much graphite on it. And then you won't have any streaks. But we're not erasing it completely, we're just kind of taking away some of that pencil detail. We can still see it, that's really important. But we don't need it to be that harsh. Okay. So I'm gonna leave my margins white. I'm gonna paint just my castle and my trees. So everything looks as it should, and then just, as before, start painting it. Although the one thing I'm going to very much suggest, this paper is very thin. It's not really meant for watercolor, but if you do less water and more pigment, like I was talking about earlier, and sort of an acrylic texture. So I'm going through and adding a lot of water to the paints that I want to use instead of in my pot here for mixing, because I want these really, really wet. Because the more wet the paints are, the thicker they will be. So now the water has soaked in pretty well. Just gonna go along here, roughen up my paint. All right. So that's about the thickness I'm gonna go for. I'm gonna start with this edge. And just start painting. What's nice is that if you're doing any straight edges, you have a straight edge paintbrush. So you'll be able to make some really nice sharp edges. But that's about the thickness you want, because you can already see the paper is starting to go a bit transparent. So you don't want to add any more water to it. You're just going straight from your paint to your paper. And then you're just pushing it around, okay? this is the finished painting. I did a couple of techniques that I wanted to explain a little bit. The splatter technique I did with black. You just hold your brush at the edges and you just flick it down at the paper. And you can add some really fun texture. I did that to the castle because I wanted to look a little bit older, and then I painted over it with my trees because I didn't really want the splatter on the tree exactly. It'll show a little bit underneath, but it's not as big as if I had splattered on top of the trees, if that makes sense. So as you're going about painting, you're just sort of planning your layers. Painting is all about layers. And then the other technique I did was just load with color and then paint, lift up, press down, lift up, press down, lift up, and it gives this sort of rough slate kind of look. It's just something fun to do. And then I went over on top with the brown to create some branches. Now I'm going to do a time lapse of me cutting it out, going to these edges. These are edges I want, remember, because we're going to glue on top. So I'll show you what that looks like. And then I'm going to get started on painting the scenery on the other side. Here we go. See, I actually am revising my plan because I realized that I did need this upper flap. You don't need it to extend all the way as planned, but you do need at least some. So I'm going to take my tree up a little bit more to encompass this so that I don't have any white space. It looks a little funny to me. So I'm going to fix that. Adding a bit of paint, and you may have seen I had already cut through it, so I actually went and used my tape and taped up the back. You will still see this line, particularly when it's painted, but it'll be folded over, so it won't really matter that much. So I'm just going to go up and fill this completely in green. Because I want that top flap. So it's a bit of a tactical error. But you know, art is all about improvising. There we go. Okay. Alright, so side one, I've cut out the outside. Now I'm going to cut the inside of the windows out, so those will be transparent. And then I'm going to get started and do the exact same process I've done with side one with my other sheet of paper and make side two. Again, I'm going to pencil in my idea, and then I'm going to paint it. I'm going to cross out areas that I know I want to cut out to remind me. I'm going to make sure I have a top flap, a side flap, and a bottom flap to glue onto the box. And I'm going to then wait for it to dry. That's very important. This part is all pretty much dry, which makes cutting it out very easy. So then once it's dry, you cut it out and you make sure that you have that border left, and then you're good to go. So what's coming up next is a time lapse of me finishing part one, and then I'll do part two for the other side of our theater box. Okay. So here are the two finished pieces that I have done for my shadow box. So now, and I've decided all I want to do is 2. You have this whole extra sheet for doing the bottom and the top if you want to. You could do clouds, you could do more shrubs. If you're underground, you can draw roots hanging down. You know, the world is your oyster for this one. So I just gave you the option if you want to do more than what I've done, which is just 2 sides. But I'm going to work with that. I had it folded already. And when you paint it, sometimes the folds will forget that they're there. So you have to sort of remind them. Okay. It still ended up not being even. Oh, well, it looks even there. Okay. And then fold this one down. Again, lining up your edge. There we go. Pretty much perfect. And this one. All right. So now that you've folded those edges, you have these cute little squares on the corner. I want you to cut them off. So what I mean by that is go along your square and cut them out on each corner. Okay, there. Because now it will fold over just like tabs. Okay, just like that. I'm going to apply glue to the insides of my tabs. Just as we had seen before, I am going to glue it to the box here. And I'm going to do this side first. I want to make sure I have it right on the edge, which you're just going to have to do by feel. Okay, there you go, right nicely on the edge. Very, very nice. And now I'm gonna fold down the top and do apply a bit of pressure so that glue really sticks nicely. And also do the same for your bottom edge. And then you're gonna do that for the other side. Make sure my edge lines up there. Feels pretty good. Just a little bit here. Okay. Go. Using that little bit of pressure to make sure that glue really sticks. I'm gonna do the top just the same way. Sticking very nicely. And then the bottom. Okay. Voila. So there you have your shadow theater box. I am going to touch up the edges, and another thing that you can do is you have all this white on the edge. If you want, you can now paint that a different color or as part of your scene. I'm probably just gonna leave it as is, but I am gonna touch up my white edges, and that'll be that. So I will see you for the next project where we are making our dragon and our wizard or witch. See you next time. All right. Well, thank you so much for following along with me for these projects with the art kit. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, you have this wonderful little pamphlet in the box. It's about becoming a member at UVA. And also do remember that if you hashtag UVA art kits, you can share your projects on Instagram, and also by tagging UV Arts by April 30th, you have the chance to win a $10 Dutch Brothers gift card. If you would like to pursue private art lessons, you can book a lesson with me on my website, which is in the link below, and I would love to see you. Thank you again. Until next time.